What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Split Screen D&D, the place where we're attacking all things Dungeons & Dragons from both this and that side of the screen.
Both sides?
Both sides.
Wow, we're man.
I know. It's, my name's Tom Quinn, resident Dungeon Master here at Modern Myth.
I'm Josh Winans, resident player character here at Modern Myth.
And we're going to crank right into this one. We've been talking for a little bit about doing an episode like this.
Yeah,
and
a while.
As it happens, Wizards of the Coast kind of jumped the gun and kind of forced our hand on the issue to some extent with the announcement of One D&D. If you are watching the D&D YouTube space, you absolutely know about this. Everyone's talking about One D&D. But we're actually not going to be focusing so much on One D&D. We're going to try to keep with the topic that we had planned, which marries very well with that, which is kind of what we want out of the future of Dungeons and Dragons, what we'd like to see moving forward with this hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we jump into that, hey, how you doing? Hey, I just want to thank all you wonderful people out there for hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button. I don't know if you hit the bell. I don't think we get notified about that, but it's been amazing, all the support we've been getting. It's just so humbling, and thank you guys so much. If you haven't yet, please hop on board the train like everyone else is and join the Modern Myth family.
Ooh, the mythos.
Ooh. Do we need a name for our followers? It's not the mythos.
No.
That sucks.
It's we're that's corny. That's corny.
But yeah, thank you guys so much. And also, Patreon's up and running. Again, those of you who are helping supply the beer for these weird rants we go on, we very much appreciate it. I always forget the website.
Patreon.com/modmyth.
You think I could remember that? But
it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Patreon. Anyway.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So I think as we get to the end of this episode, I think both of us probably, there's a couple of things we probably would like to say about what we now know about One D&D, but early on here,
before we get into our rants.
yeah, well, no, and I think, like I said, I think it's going to be, there's going to be good and bad to talk about there. But
That's true.
Kind of in a vacuum a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be difficult to do so, but
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, when we were conceiving this, we were kind of saying, what do we want in 6th edition? We know now that's an archaic way of thinking.
We don't use numbers.
That should die by the side of the road. There is only one.
All hail the one.
So, I guess if you've got something right out of the gate,
we can get going.
Yeah, I mean, from the player side,
yeah.
Obviously every player and every DM is going to have their own list of things they'd like to see, but for the moment, you basically have to speak for every player who's ever played Dungeons and Dragons.
Because I am I touch all the bases of the player.
You are the Justicar of.
Not at all. So I probably this would be wonderful if I say like, hey, why didn't you talk about this? Please put in the comments, because I learn a lot by reading your comments. As a player, it broadens my perspective a lot.
No doubt. As we're going through kind of these thoughts, we'd love to hear down in the comments what you guys want to see now. Rolling out with the new One D&D.
Yeah.
So player side. Give me some ideas about what you want to see as a departure from, really, I guess I'd say for a departure from 5th edition, but it could be a departure from any system if you found that you would rather it be there.
Well, as I look at 5e and what the 3 pillars that it touts to be a part of the game, social has just everything's social, right? And hey, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's where it seems like I'm trying not to. That's even One D&D or whatever the heck it's called is moving in that direction where all social. But I really think the other pillars are being neglected, and that's no more pillar is neglected than exploration.
Yes,
by far, and that. I think I don't know if we ever made this comment on the air. Like, why does everyone not like the Ranger? Well, it's because it's built to be an exploration class, and exploration isn't supported. It's the whole side of the game we're not getting a lot for, and it's like having a stew of meat and carrots, but no potatoes. Like, you need your potatoes too.
There better be some potatoes in that.
I'm telling you, actually.
Holy crap!
Yeah, I'm a big potato fan, but like. So that's what I would want to see, and I think this goes into the DM realm because as a player, I can't really instigate that. But maybe classes could start having more besides just the range or having a lot of things to help with exploration. Maybe other classes have more things that go into that pillar. I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo, and I would actually whether this is wasn't mentioned just now on your end, or if it was intentionally not mentioned. I mean, I would say that rules as written. I mean, so much of current 5th edition is a massive block of combat related jargon, and I think social has kind of organically, because there's not that much in the rules as written. That's kind of organic thing, and I have I take no qualm with that.
Right.
As the way people are manifesting their RP at the tables.
That's your table. Have fun at your table.
But I think 5th edition certainly rules as written is
true.
failing in handing DMs anything meaningful by way of exploration and social. Now I think players have kind of taken it upon themselves at new school tables to focus in on the social.
Yeah.
But I completely agree that exploration has just kind of become the thing that you give a brief description of, how you got to that cave entrance, having never been in these woods before. And, I mean, it really has kind of diminished to that level. And as you say, that's entirely on DMs and their players to deliver that, what they want out of that experience. But it's fair to say we've got a rogue fly in the studio.
I'm gonna fucking fly,
yeah,
dude.
that thing's
dead.
But it is one of these things where, I think to some extent, if you are a new DM coming in and the first time you pick up a DMG, it's 5th edition, you have no reason to believe that exploration is an important part of the game.
No.
And that's something out of the future of D&D 100%. You want it as a player, as a DM, effectively, I think you find yourself looking back if you're wanting better means of running exploration, whether it's hex crawls, dungeon exploration, which again, you can make it whatever you want it to be, but there are really no hard and fast rules for how that transpires in 5th edition. So moving forward, 100% with you.
And I have to, I'm ignorant. I have purposely not read the Dungeon Master's Guide, so I'm flying a little blind here in what it actually says. Do they give you much with hey, how to design a trap? Do they go really into that, or is that something you really do have to?
No, not so much. I mean, I would say it's what they are handing you. Again, what they are handing you assumes that the game that would be transpiring at your table, and this is why I would say 5th edition Raw has some major holes in it that need addressing. I think the picture the Dungeon Master Guide paints you is, hey, your players might do some exploration in between these massive, awesome combats that we've given you all these rules for. They also might talk to people in between these massive, awesome combats that we've given you tons of rules for. And that's more or less the layout. I mean, I wish I had the exact page count for each.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, the DMG, and even to some extent the player's handbook, are the vast majority of those pages
or combat
are explaining how you function within the combat space.
And it makes sense, though, especially for exploration, it's harder to fly by the seat of your pants. And in social, it's really easy to just fly, to improv. To improv exploration, I don't sit in your seat. I don't know, is it that even possible? You have to have your pre-planned traps. You have to pre-plan explorations to some degree.
Yeah, I think there's room for improvisation in all of the pillars, but I just think because I think it's important to think of each rule set as the future first point of contact for new players and new dungeon masters, that I think 5th edition really was kind of leaning on the fact that there were other rule sets that came before it that really paid exploration its due.
Right.
And like, oh, hey, well, they're going to kind of know about that stuff.
Yeah.
Combat's getting more complex. We need to make sure that they know how to do that.
Gotcha.
And because of that, it's just kind of, but for someone whose first point of contact is 5th edition or One D&D, I think
all hail One D&D.
I think you find yourself in a space where it would not be hard for a new dungeon master to believe that combat really should, at their tables, have an equivalent weight. That's going to drive me nuts. Have an equivalent weight to the number of pages it carries in the DMG, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Well, I should say I don't think that's the case.
One in D&D's. One of the things that they said is they do want to make D&D more accessible to new DMs. So maybe that will be a thing they talk about. Who knows? We don't know much about it. So that's my first, like, I, as a player, like, especially after the OSR exploration, then kind of opened my eyes. Like, oh, there's some really cool stuff here that we should not forget.
Right.
So
no doubt.
What about you, though?
Exploration, definitely paying it some its due. I think was definitely on my list. The backbone of a lot of what I think I'm going to be talking about is primarily going to, mainly because anything else that I think we will talk about has to live against the backdrop of I'm just going to use the term lethality, the lethality of a system.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I get 5th edition is clearly designed to be a space in which you are, the canvas that it has provided you is a space in which longer form stories can play out with the characters being the fundamental protagonist from square one. I mean, all of these things. And I don't have a problem with that. I think to the idea that the future of D&D is either equally lethal or less so, which has been the trajectory, is to say that stories aren't made more meaningful by the threat of the story ending. And absolutely, I think that is a major misstep. If for anyone who believes, now, I 100% am not advocating, hey, we need to go from 5th edition to One D&D, and we need to be back in OSR level lethality. That's not what I'm saying. If you like that, there are many systems to accommodate that for you. Mm-hmm. The future, I think, of the system that 5th edition is tailoring itself to, the types of games that clearly it's wanting to play out at the tables that are utilizing that rule set.
Yeah.
But I think, if we were saying that high end, old school level difficulty is a 10 and 5th edition is, well, because we don't have a different point of comparison, a 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a future iteration that, One D&D should really be targeting something like a 4.
Yeah.
Something. I mean, I mean, whatever that number is, and that's the thing is
no, I hear what
every
you're saying.
table's going to tailor that number.
Yes.
But the rules that are handed to you, anything else I might say about the game, it just goes, well, what does that matter if the players know there's no danger in the world? What does anything matter? What does it matter that you're on a major quest? What does it matter that you just stumbled into a red dragon's lair? If 5th edition has taught you, well, there are no-win scenarios. I can't mistake my way into death. There will always be some way I can wriggle my way out of those 10 subsequent mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think I think 5th edition, and that's not entirely rules as written. I think some of that is part of the modern ethos, but the rules as written certainly don't aid you as a DM in presenting a world that feels dangerous to your players. You really have to kind of go, all right, I'm going to set this here and I'm going to kind of start doing my own thing to bring that challenge. So talk with me from your perspective about as a player, like, am I as a DM just way off base? Is that not going to enhance anything for you at the table?
No. There was a time when I would more along the, I want to see my character's arc through to the end. There was a time And don't get me wrong, I still want my character to go to the end.
That's the point.
Yes.
That once should stand in contention with the game itself.
That's where the tension comes from.
Exactly.
And so they're like, I don't want to keep alluding to what One D&D has already said, but they're talking about wanting to build stories and make it really meaningful characters. You can't have that without that tension. Right. So like Lord of the Rings, what happens if, everyone's like, why didn't the Eagles just fly Frodo over there to and drop the ring? And well, who would read that book?
Right.
Like, and if the Lord of the Ring fans who are like, no, there are reasons. I know there are reasons, but like that idea though.
Yeah. No, I think I don't know what the primary driver is. There's many variables, I'm sure. But and like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the One D&D side. There's so many people covering so many things about it.
Yeah, we don't.
But thus far,
though, we do need to ride that hype train.
Well, we'll get to that right at the end of the episode. I just think that what I have seen so far does not assuage my concerns that it will not at least remain as non-lethal.
Right.
As it currently
is.
I'm
not getting that vibe at all.
And my concern is that it will continue to follow the trajectory that it's been on, in which, I mean, at some point, we might as well dispense with character hit points. Why have them? If you just want to run through combat and I'll narrate you guys fighting and I'll go, oh man, you just got hurt. It was a devastating blow, but you hit him back and ultimately you guys came out on top. It was a good day. I mean, like those hit points, as you well know as a player, that is your metric for the tension of combat.
Right.
So we already know how important the potentiality of death is.
Right.
The problem is 5th edition, I think, does not do a great job of making good on that threat.
No, and I definitely agree.
And as best I can tell, One D&D has no intention of rectifying. And one of my big asks, if I could have said, WotC, do me this one thing, would just be, look at, and this is not to say that there aren't some amazing stories playing out in the 5th edition landscape. I love what we are doing at our table with 5th edition. I really enjoy those stories that are unfolding, but I think those could be made more meaningful if. And I'll also say we are not playing rules as written 5th edition.
No, we're very.
I'm regularly doing things to try and provide you guys more challenge than what the rules would suggest I should be doing.
Right.
So
I definitely agree with what you're saying. I don't know if I want to go because there's a line, right? Because you don't want to go the 10 OSR. I don't think. In the 5e, because it's hard to build a really solid story over you could die any encounter.
Well, I think that 5th edition is what it is, and again, we play 5th edition. There's things I love about 5th edition, but the idea, and I've been trying to not step into One D&D space, but something that they said in their presentation was, they were so happy with this foundation that 5th edition has lent them that they want to build from that. Yeah. And if that is anything akin to saying that 5th edition does not have glaring issues, you were wrong. You're just wrong.
That's a really good point.
If you're unless your argument is the stories that are unfolding at tables are completely detached from the potentiality of those characters falling throughout the course of the story, and there's I just refuse to believe that the mortality of any protagonist is what makes us root for them.
It's like any movie. If the hero runs through and Mary sues everything, are you going to be attached to that character? No. I mean, you have to have that hero struggle,
right?
Otherwise, it's not entertaining.
So I think that concerns me a little bit. Is there seems to be no acknowledgement of the fact that 5th edition is a 1 on the lethality scale.
Right.
And I'm not advocating for a 10, but I am advocating for not a 1.
I'm having a real hard time not going off script and just ranting.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot back.
Okay.
We're like I said, I think we'll have some room at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Like let's try to knock out 3. Let's try to knock out 3.
Okay. I'll be real quick on this because my next like 3 points are all. It's interesting that you're talking about like, hey, what is all the most of the rules as written is addressing as combat, and what I want is a lot more combat stuff. What it feels like for me as a player is I have there's one. What do? I run up to the monster and smack it. What do I do on my next turn? I run up to the monster and smack it.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a spellcaster, there's a lot more variety there, which is a lot of fun. But as a martial class, that's what you do. So I think one of the obvious things, and actually a nod to 4E, something that they did, 4E, something that they did really well was like the exotic weapons. Why don't we bring exotic backs and really lean into that? Like a net and a trident. That'd be a cool combo, and it's backed by history, you know?
Well, and it would also... well, I want to let you finish because I'm keep
well,
rolling.
I'll tell you what. So I have like 3 points on this. So I'm going to start with I want combat to be more varied and more dynamic, where you have more choices than just run and hit. I think the first one is weapons. It blows my mind. There's a lot of things you could do with weapons. Like you have bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, and none of that really matters. So maybe you make bludgeoning something special happens with bludgeoning. Something happens with those 3 to make them more distinct. So if I have a warhammer and a great axe, I might be using one over the other in certain situations. I mean,
100%. You are speaking a very 3-5 language right
okay.
now. But I think that nod towards. I mean, there's no getting around the fact that that's going to start making the game crunchier, and I know a lot of why they wanted to depart from that. But I 100% am going to agree with that position. I think I think specifically from my one of my points was shoring up the chasm between magical and non-magical.
Yeah, I think we're kind of talking about a very
game.
similar thing. Yeah, that it's and granted, I play a half caster, and I've built him to be very unique. But it's still I just do my spear attack, and you're really good at homebrewing, so I have a lot more options. Like I can, do kind of really cool stuff. But like, homebrewing is so fantastic, and that you can find those resources out there. But I think it should be these should take a leaf like out of homebrewers' books and be like, hey, this is some really cool stuff. We need to don't copy, but come with like, hey, let's come up with new stuff. Like longbow and crossbow. The only why would you ever use like a not hand crossbow, because you can definitely cheese that, but like why would you use a heavy crossbow over a longbow? No, there's no reason. Right. But what all of a sudden if you put longbow had like you have to have a certain dexterity to be able to wield it. And if you don't have that dexterity, now all of a sudden heavy crossbow is your backup weapon, which makes, little things like that. And that's a very small thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely think having, to your point about dynamic combat, I think I completely agree. And I do, I again, as much as I like to sneer when 4th edition comes up, there were, I think certainly the structure of creatures, where there was something to be said for I think the creatures were inherently more compelling in 4th edition by the way that they were structured, their stat blocks. Mm-hmm. I think I completely agree that what I would like to see moving forward, mainly because this really does fit into both the player and the DM side, is when I'm deploying creatures, I'm digging into the it's so rare that I just use a vanilla creature out of the monster manual anymore, because I'll wish it did something else. So I'll grab it and I'll go, well, I'm giving it this ability too, because it's way more interesting if it has the ability to your point, like, net and spear or net and, whatever.
Right.
It's way more interesting if that, uber bounty hunter that the party's been at odds with has like some sweet, some kind of net that is also razor laced with poison barbs or something. Ooh. And so, and like, just they're they just don't have that kind of stuff. And on the player side, what you're talking about with weapons, this huge nod to Dungeon Coach and his martial rework, because I think what One D&D should do. One D&D, if you're listening to this, which you're almost certainly not, or if you are, you're like, fuck those guys. Hit up seriously, hit up Dungeon Coach. Look at his martial rework. It's a masterpiece. You should take a note out of the book, because it literally is doing everything you're talking about. Weapons that are meaningful decisions.
Yes.
For a character like a fighter who is literally the Swiss Army knife, I carry something for every situation.
That's a dope thing.
Yeah. In 5th edition, there's no reason to carry multiple damage. I mean, or say there are select few reasons.
Yes.
But not in a way that from fight to fight, you literally go like skeletons, putting the spear away. Let's get out that mace. Where you're going, you should, as a fighter, you should be able to look at your adversaries and go, I'm going to make an educated guess.
Yes. That's yes.
And you are rewarded for guessing correctly as the combat unfolds.
Right.
Or you are punished for choosing poorly, but you are getting some kind of feedback that is telling you. This gets back to kind of the idea of like combat as a puzzle. That kind of
yes.
Anyways, but yes. So check that out if One D&D. I know you guys are hanging on our every word. So get
One D&D.
Get over there and check it out. No, I'm with you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just go through my reworks that I want for, and then we can pivot. I'm sorry, I'm taking so long.
No, you're good.
So we got the weapon rework. I think it's for martial classes, but I also want this might be controversial. More status effects. I want those more all over the place, which I understand will be balancing issues that you need to be able to have more cures and that kind of stuff. But you want to talk about ways to turn a battle on its head. All of a sudden, you're blind. Okay, now you got to make some choices. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to cure your blindness? Are you going to try to fight through it anyway? Are you, are you going to take a defensive position now? Are you going to try to become? All of a sudden, you're asking yourself questions that you would never ask yourself if I'm just going to run up and hit the monster.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I think to 100% to the note of more dynamic combat. Again, I get why they're trying to remove all of that crunch, but I think in a game where the rule set clearly is telling you, hey, this is a fundamentally combat experience.
Yeah.
Just lean into that. Like, my feeling is, and kind of to my earlier point, and this is why I think it's such a good backdrop, is I know part of the reason to pull back on that crunch is like,
it's overwhelming.
Well, and combats are dragging out now, but here's the thing.
True.
Make those combats deadlier, and one way or another, they're rounding out. Either the party's going, holy shit, like we got to get the fuck out of here,
right,
or the party's crushing them. The party played it smart. They did what they needed to do. They applied the status effects that were potent in that situation. Make each turn, each well played turn, count as three turns. You know what I mean? In terms of that should be the scale of combat.
Right.
And that's something that, again, looking back, did really well. Is, I mean, you didn't have 20 round combats. You didn't have combats that played out, over an entire session. It literally was, things are looking bad. We need to get the hell out of here. Or things are looking good. Let's crush them.
Yep.
But either way, it was decided rapidly. And I think that you could still achieve that by simply ensuring that that the things are happening at the table carry more potency. And
I'd say what I'm saying also, I think, plays into that idea that you made earlier. Like, I think status effects would also provide tension.
No doubt. Yeah. And I think contrary to everything we know so far, which admittedly is not much, it would be important for monsters to also be able to apply status effects.
Hang on. I'm the immortal PC. You cannot kill me.
Hey, well, we've already lost our crits, so give us the damn status effect. Give us the damn status effect.
Everyone's already talked about that. Yeah. We're not talking.
No, I but again, it's one of those deals. Part of the reason I think I agree, and it's exciting is because whereas cool, you guys have some new options, some new tactical options through status effects. I've got an entire menagerie of creatures that can do things now that you as a party, even at level 15, are seeing for the first time. Yeah. You weren't ready for this. You know, it's not like, I'm grappled. I've been grappled a trillion times. I'm poisoned. I've been poisoned a trillion times. I'm with you 100% on that. In terms of creating, dynamic combat and tense combat, catching a party off guard with a well-laid trap, or what have you.
Yeah. Oh, like a damage. Oh, anyway, I could go because I also think spells but I'm gonna stop talking. I want to hear from you.
I think this does kind of tie into the exploration side, but I think it's something that 5th edition really dropped the ball on. It's actually, I think it's been eroding, let's say, for some time. But there's very little about modern D&D that places any value on time. And again, this is something, there's a lot of people who are looking at the One D&D thing and just going like, no big deal. I'll just homebrew it anyways. No big deal. I'll homebrew it anyways. That's kind of missing the point. The point is they're providing this playtest material so that you can respond and give your feedback. So now I have all sorts of skepticism about.
I'm sorry, Cameron, I kicked you.
All sorts of skepticism about how much that feedback is going to be taken to heart.
Well, that's a rant right there.
Well, yes, but I'll just say that if you're just writing it off as, well, they're not going to listen anyways, and I'm just going to homebrew it anyways. So I'm not going to look at the playtest material. I'm not even going to. Well, then I mean, there's no point in even having the conversation. Okay. And so that is to just say, I think
you almost went to a rant there.
For new DMs, and I try to think about each system, each new iteration, or in this case, the one iteration.
All hail One D&D.
As being someone's first point of contact to this hobby. And that's an important thing because it will define the way I think I would feel very differently about 5th edition if it was my first point of contact. I would feel very different about old school if it was my if I mean, like, see what you're saying. Like I consider myself fortunate that I got some experience prior to 5th edition because I think it's given me some perspective on the things that it's not doing well.
Yeah, well, let me because I started with 4th edition, which many would regard as by far the worst edition. I still enjoyed it very much. My thought is maybe have the core but also include the optionals. Like, hey, here's the basic stuff. Hey, you want some more life and death stuff in your game? You want to increase that tension? Here's how you do that. But again, who knows if they're going to be doing that?
I mean, seeing as they've never done it, and I don't see any reason. I mean, I think they have provided little optional rules here and there, but effectively offering a, let's call it, difficulty mode, which, don't get me wrong, there's some great supplements. Hardcore mode, 5th edition hardcore mode is a great book that's out there for anyone who's actually looking to ratchet their game up by lethality. That's a great place to look. But I think that this has less to do, I mean, to some extent it plays into the lethality or the difficulty, but time should matter. Time should always matter.
Well, we went off on a tangent. Yes, but time should absolutely matter.
And part, to a great degree, that time has always been coiled up in the exploration pillar.
Which,
your torches, let's say your rations, underwater exploration, your O2. I mean, all of these things.
Yeah, I think that is somewhat covered, though. The underwater exploration.
Well, yeah, but
the overland basic stuff is never covered.
No. I mean, to a degree that suggests it's not important, and that's, I think, couldn't be further from the truth. And so I think providing a rule set that should a brand new DM come into the One D&D core rule books, that you've given them some impression that, hey, exploration is taking place, and exploration takes resources. You're burning calories, you're burning torches, I mean, all of these things.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not suggesting that this needs to be something that you're, lockstep on, but the fact that it essentially doesn't exist at many modern tables.
Yeah.
Again, that can be a DM adjudicated thing as well. But by and large, it's been something that's kind of been like, keeping track of ammunition, that's lame. Keeping track of torches, that's lame. There is a huge amount to be gained from the management of those resources. I'm not suggesting that that's not a double-edged sword, depending on your players.
Yes.
But there's no question. Here's a good example, and it's a really easy example. It's something that I've really enjoyed is when Jake was in town. So I was running there, not so much a one-shot, just I told them that I'd run some D&D for him. And so they're running it's a 5th edition, sci-fi 5th edition Deep Space Salvage, kind of a horror vibe.
Like
they basically come upon this
alien kind of thing.
Little bit, yeah. This old husk of a ship that's just floating out in space, and built into that entire system is the fact that their suits have a limited amount of oxygen.
Okay.
So from square one, when they depart their ship, there is a clock that is ticking, and they know that asphyxiation is
not a good way to go.
A very, very real possibility. The amount of impetus to move forward, the amount of tension, their suits carry an hour of oxygen. They cannot even take a short rest until they find somewhere that has atmosphere. So there's this, I mean, and what a different experience that is.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
But it's a really, I mean, especially space, it's really difficult to graft that exact thing into fantasy world unless it's underwater and you can hold your breath for an hour.
Or, if you're going through a labyrinth and, oh, shoot, you're stuck in a labyrinth and you can't resupply, now rations becomes a thing.
Right.
So I think the common argument on a lot of tables is like, dude, we have 1,000 gold pieces. Do you think I give a crap about spending a gold to make sure I have enough food?
Right.
And I understand that argument.
The problem is if you set the precedent of rations aren't important and then spring on your players that they're lost in the forest, and they go, well, if we knew getting lost in the forest was a thing, we would have rationed up. And you go, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't not care about it sometimes and then...
Yeah,
but I mean,
and at our table, we're really. I feel like we're every time we go to a store, I always say it's like, hey, we just re-provision our rations. You're like, okay, that's 3 gold.
And here's the thing: is I'll be the first to admit, we certainly exist in the table space of rations are not a major element.
They are there though.
Absolutely. But it's not something that I am using as a means of imposing time.
What's nice is we are always aware that rations is a resource. So whenever you're like, hey, by the way, rations are a resource, we're like, what? Rations have never been a resource before.
Right.
Anyway, sorry. I'm building you up, and I don't like that. I don't like saying how you're doing good things. I need to stop.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure I think that's just like par for the course things as DMs go. I don't feel all that flattered about making you guys eat food in the game at some point. So again, I would love it if future editions, I mean, so much of what I'm going to say is just curb the trajectory you've been on and look back to what's worked in the past and implement a little bit of it. Because I get that you don't want 5th edition to be OSR. 100%. I don't want 5th edition to be OSR. I want those to be 2 distinct experiences where you can pick and choose.
Yeah.
But I think you've kind of the pendulum has swung
too
far the other direction, and because there's no actual pendulum, if you want to keep right on swinging, that's exactly what WotC can do.
Right.
And I think that's a bad play. Eventually, you're going to be telling stories that have no weight to them. People might still get tons of enjoyment out of that, but until you've told a story that has weight, you won't understand what you're missing. And that's the
that you can live the books you're reading,
I said 3, but I think we basically, if we're going to say anything about the kind of what we've been given a taste of, we probably need to start pivoting that direction.
Yes, I agree. In fact, I'm going to pour myself another beer as we.
Then while you're pouring, I'm actually, it's like a desert in there. I'm going to So my biggest takeaways thus far, and again, with regard to contrasting with the things I want, and now I will say these were once. I fully acknowledge that they were highly unlikely to manifest in future editions of Dungeons and Dragons,
right?
Given its trajectory, but by and large, I would say everything that I was hoping to hear in an announcement like this was either disregarded or flat out stiff-armed as they moved the other direction.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now again, that's being a little aggressive. We still know
we know so
very
little.
But I will say there's no suggestion that I can see in what they've released so far that would lead me to believe that they have taken the relative lack of lethality into consideration moving forward. And again, it'll continue to be whatever experience it is. The main thing I want to get to, I definitely want you to give your 2 cents, but the main thing I want to get to, because it's something I think important about that release discussion, is the move towards digital. But I want you to be able to say what you want about the rules that we know so far before we go there, because
you mean like, is this time for me to open up on my rants? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I don't know how big a rant that you have. I kind of felt like there was a lot of what you said that actually aligned with some of what they're doing.
No, and that's the thing. So when I listen to the thing is they're talking in very vague language, which they have to do because you can't get specifics. It's so far out. You're talking about rebalancing things. Okay, cool. Class is like, hey, you're gonna fucking fix Ranger. You're gonna make Monk a little bit more interesting. Okay, cool. I love those ideas. Like we disagree on this a lot. We were talking before. I love more autonomy, more choices. So if you're saying like, hey, I can make an innately strong elf, there's a part of me that really enjoys that. I can understand why that might be a weird thing. I enjoy that. I looked at the feats, like, hey, they're making feats more of a thing. That's a great way to make characters more unique. So I like that. And so there's a lot of things, but there's some, it's what I see happening and what I heard. And that scares me. And this is going to be my rant, is because you see it so much nowadays. They found the formula, right? They found the formula that made the money. Okay, now we're just going to wring that formula for everything it's worth until we no longer get money out of it, and then we're going to be creative and think of something new. Yeah.
I think it's likely a pessimistic and accurate description of, well, I think again it's no wonder why the system they found so much success with by player base.
So much money for 5e. I can't, like, how much popularity it gained is ridiculous.
Right. But I think, and I think that point, like I said, I don't want to pivot there until you've said your piece, but your point ties really well into.
Oh no, I'm down to this spitball. Let's have a good old rant fest, man.
The reason I say I think that ties really well into my biggest concern with what they've said, and it has nothing to do with the rules. That, I mean, again, there's things I would love to see happen that I doubt are going to. But whatever they were doing with the rules, this move, I think so much about the language involved in their presentation, and their presentation of what is admittedly a beautiful digital tabletop.
Oh my
Their
gosh,
virtual tabletop
is gorgeous.
Looks amazing.
Looks great.
There are all sorts of video games out there that look amazing that I wouldn't give the time of day because I'm not paying them 99 cents to do something that I can already do with a book at my table. I'm not paying them another 99 cents to do something else with a book. I'm not, and I think as a player or as a DM, and I'll float this out because right now is the time. They are saying, we're giving you this playtest material. We're telling you about this new project because we want you to play with it and we want you to give us your feedback. The only thing I would say to One D&D is,
oh, hell, One D&D.
Well, aside from that, obviously, and anytime you're interested in talking sponsorships, we will change our tune awful quick.
Yeah.
No,
We'll never sell. Yeah, we will. We'll sell.
Let's be real. Let's be real. If they come knocking on our door, you guys are gonna be hearing about how great this. No. It's but here's the thing: is if you are. To me, the biggest thing I heard in the entire announcement was Dungeons and Dragons is leaving the tabletop RPG space. We are no longer interested in being a tabletop RPG. We are laying the groundwork for Dungeons and Dragons to be a digital experience, and digital experiences can be monetized. They can be microtransactions. They can be subscribed to. Now, 5 years from now, prove me wrong, One D&D, that I'm not having to pay a monthly fee to utilize all of the content that I can already use year after year after year. And this is why. Because I really want someone to drum this video up 5 years from now, where the guy says D&D is a 50-year legacy. There aren't many things that you're handing down to your kids. There's a reason it's a 50-year legacy, because you can buy a book from 50 years ago.
We have the books now. We can just give them now.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the AD&D books.
Yeah.
We can sit down and have a phenomenal time. I will be able to do that with my children. Promise me that my kid isn't going to be paying you guys $15 a month to play a game that everyone has played for 50 years without any of your subscriptions, without any of your microtransactions, and you will have me sold on your new platform.
Fuck you, dude.
But
you're right. Fuck, that's exactly what... speculation. We have no idea what they're planning. It's too good of a move not to, almost. Think about the money.
There's no reason that you would. Again, now another thing. If they're selling a one-time purchase license to utilize their platform, cool. I mean,
and we have access where I can download it and have the physical copy on my computer.
To be able to use a beautiful tool, and like I said, I'll be the first to admit it looks gorgeous.
Oh, you're talking about the yeah.
Well, it's all getting rolled into that, So like. And there's some other side effects that I think come along with that. Go. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole on this.
Because I think we're about to hit the same thing, and that's one thing I've absolutely adored about the 5e space that has existed and it's culminated. And you see this in a lot of PC games as well. The modding community, the homebrew community has taken this game to a whole new level that is just amazing. And when you get into that realm where they're controlling what you have access to, you are stifling that space.
And I'd take that beyond Dungeons and Dragons, period.
Yeah,
There are so many other systems.
That's the thing. It's like the reason why I can say this is scary. How many other Bethesda did this shit? I mean, there are so many other.
Well, and I think if you look, I think we are going to have a very, again, purely speculative, but I think we're going to have a very difficult time separating the model that D&D is moving towards from EA, from Bethesda, from Activision, from I
really hope you're wrong, dude. I really hope you're wrong.
I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But that's my when as soon as they started flashing beautiful images of, again, I mean, like, I don't know how familiar you are with Tailspire, but a very potent virtual tabletop space.
Cool.
And we're not just talking like a Roll20 virtual tabletop. They actually, I believe they partnered, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, guys, but with Hero Forge, so you could design your own minis and bring them into the... So some cool stuff there. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to play D&D 5 years from now,
you can't do that.
You're not going to do it on Tailspire. Why would you do it on Tailspire? Why would you do it on Roll20? Why would you do, and the issue with that, and this is the heart of I would say our whole, at least this segment of the channel, but maybe our whole channel, is that D&D is great, but it's so much better because there are phenomenal ideas in older editions, other systems, other forms of media that aren't even tabletop RPGs that can be brought in and utilized. And if the developers of this new project believe that somehow the digital barriers that are going to stand between those types of additions and their core product aren't going to negatively impact the experience of the tabletop RPG community as a whole. And D&D. Again, our game is better because I can implement things on the fly from, I might be reading the rule set from a different system and go, holy crap, that's a cool way of doing XYZ. How do I implement that in their system? And more importantly, are those ideas even in the ethos 10 years from now if everyone's first point of contact is One D&D digital?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even, I worry about what an entity like this does to the broader ecosystem of tabletop RPGs.
If it hasn't happened not countless, but several times in the past, I don't think I'd be on, I'd be like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Look at you, conspiracy theorist guy with your conspiracy theories. But it's happened and the reason why it happens so often is you make a shit ton of money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about how many people are currently playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I, as a DM, every 7, 8, 10 years can buy 3 books, and that's it.
Yeah, versus a monthly subscription.
I mean, not even, and and sure, there's gonna be the platinum subscription where I can choose. I get all the different poses and loadouts for the minis. Ooh, I get all the,
I know.
But
loot box. Oh, they're gonna have loot boxes. Dear God.
Well,
we're ranting a conspiracy theory.
We're getting, but the point being that while the digital tabletop, I think, really delivers in so many ways on something that a part of me would love to have.
Mm-hmm.
I think anyone who has existed in the console and PC game space has seen what happens. I mean, it's become such a standard mode of operation to commodify smaller pieces of a product, and I think so. I mean, it's it is what it is.
Depressing as shit, dude. We can't end this way.
No, we can't. We can't end on a low note. And I really hope. Again, I'll be the first to say I really hope that I'm wrong. Actually, I like I said, the likelihood that One D&D is clicking on our tiny little channel, but One D&D, if you're listening to this, just assuage all my concerns right now and just go, this tool. There is a free version that will allow you to play any of the fundamental aspects of the game.
Highly adapt, like you can type in rules. I don't know, or just always continue again. I think we should do an episode on the virtual versus in
virtual
person.
Tabletop versus real life.
Yeah. Always allow that in-person option to always be available, and then all of my fears will be allayed too.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't see it being really on a personal level. It being a problem in many regards. That's true. Think right in this moment, I am standing in relation to this digital platform in the way that old school D&D enthusiasts have stood staring at modern D&D. They're going, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing there, guy? And they're not. And again,
are we the get off our lawns now? Or is that what we are?
Well, I mean, I think we're beginning to clear the horizon to some extent. Yeah. And like I said, I really hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that probably the general tone of this episode has been one of the more negative tones that we've had, and we really try to find kind of the kernel of not necessarily positivity, but productivity in that space. So why don't we round it out that way?
Okay.
Do you?
Sure. Well, I'll just say things like, so One D&D is this thing. We went on a rant, but things like I would love to see future and just. I think, as we move towards it, the community has blossomed and grown into such an amazing community that even if all our darkest aspirations, not aspirations, geez, wrong word, our darkest fears come to light. It's kind of like with Fallout. that opened up a whole gate for what's that word? Outer Worlds, is that the game where there's like the Fallout world?
I didn't play it, but yeah.
So
I think
like,
was it
it was basically the
published that?
team of Fallout guys were like F this, and they left and formed their own the gaming company, if I remember correctly. So no matter what, I think tabletop's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. I think there's a high possibility that there's going to be some amazing stuff that they come out with. I think some of we're addressing a lot of we didn't even touch challenge ratings, which I thought we would touch on. Like if they're revamping a lot of these things,
I guess I assumed that was couched in the difficulty side of
I
of
guess
things.
that's true.
But we haven't seen any of that yet, so that's why I didn't want to touch.
Yeah,
it,
that's true.
Because I have no idea what they're doing.
But maybe they're saying they're going to try to do a lot of stuff. Maybe that's all in the back pocket. Who knows?
Yeah.
And we might just be conspiracy theorists who just see the negative side of things.
It could be the case.
I really hope it's the case.
I will say this much. I think the beauty of tabletop RPGs is that as they have for 50 plus years, they don't live or die by the fancy new app on your phone. They don't live or die by being able to get the latest edition. I mean, how many old school guys are subscribers of this channel who will thoroughly attest, hey, I've been running BX and like literally that's where I started and I'm still running it today. Yeah. Good on them. Like, and to some extent, they are the testament to the fact that whatever this new platform means,
good or bad,
there will be opportunity for real life people to sit around real life tables, sharing real life awesome experiences, awesome stories. Yeah. And, I think my big hope, my big takeaway is that, or not so much hope, the calm in that storm is that they can do whatever the heck they want with their platform.
They deserve. Yeah.
I've got my 5th edition books. I've got my AD&D books. I've got OSE books. We'll keep right on doing what it is we do.
Yeah.
And we are not alone in that endeavor. So, yeah. With that, we got anything?
No, this wouldn't have turned. I did not expect it to go that way. But,
I don't really know what to think about that, but
I know.
I do think that this one probably just deserves a standard sign off.
I think you're absolutely
amidst
right.
all things. So why don't you do the honor, sir? Just take us on out.
Hey, Internet, never forget, no matter what happens out in that crazy world, whenever you guys get together with your friends, whatever you do, the world is yours.